Chief cook and bottle washer, chief of elevator maintenance, chief of parking lot safety. What are the chiefs for anyway? I'm Jay Adelson, and I'm the founder and chairman of Revision 3. I've started and built a number of companies. My goal in this show is to pass on some of the knowledge from my experiences to you, the budding entrepreneurs, and hopefully leave you with some words of wisdom. Thanks to Carbonite for sponsoring this episode of Ask Jay. Today's question comes from Jawan from Atlanta, Georgia, who asks, can you explain the roles of the mainstream C-level officers? What are their day-to-day duties? And is there a hierarchy within them? I think it's widely assumed that the CEO sits at the top of the totem pole and every other officer reports to them, but is that actually the case? Jawan, good question. You know, what's going on here with all these chiefs around the table and what do they do? I guess the first part that I'd like to answer is really a simple one, which is chiefs do report to the CEO. I can't think of a case where an actual C-level employee is parallel somehow to a CEO. Ultimately, every company has to have a CEO. Legally, they have to have a CEO, and that CEO is accountable and responsible for that company, which means everyone in the company has to report in to that individual. If it's not, you know, if the investors are asking you to be a CEO but have somebody sit alongside you that actually people report to, you're not really a CEO and something is goofy, and so don't go that way. Anyway, so what are these chiefs and what do they do? It's a really good question. Now, I would say that in the startups I've done, I tend to steer away from hiring people, even if they are direct reports to the CEO. I don't call them chiefs at the beginning. I tend to call them VPs. And the reason is because, really you have to have somewhere for them to advance. Remember, they're already at the top of the totem pole. You're CEO, they're not taking your job. You better hope not. And so what are you going to promote them into? At some point you have to give them some new title, and really I save the chief level for that purpose. However, let's just assume for the moment the chiefs and the VPs are the same people. Let's go through it a little bit. First off, for a technology company, you're going to need a chief technology officer. And there are some different philosophies on what a CTO does. I believe that a CTO is responsible for the direction, the architecture, the technology of the company, which means that engineering and operations for that company should report to that chief technology officer. Now, chief marketing officer is an important role. It's going to obviously function differently for different companies, but in general, it's responsible for the outward messaging of that company. You know, whether that's advertising, whether that's brand management, things like all of the public relations that the company might have, talking to press, managing blog posts, dealing with all of the crisis type things that would happen. Our chief marketing officer at Dig was Mike Mazer. Mike Mazer handled all of the outside communication, booking, speaking engagements, participating at South by Southwest, even the crises like the HD DVD fiasco at Dig, where there was a ton of press happening all at once, and we had to come up with messages and Q&A and how do we respond and blog posts. Mike was I believe, number one and responsible for all that stuff. So you know, a chief marketing officer, very important person on the team. You also might have a chief revenue officer or a VP of sales. Pretty clear what that person does. Any of the salespeople report to that individual. They're responsible for the $ number that comes into the business on a monthly basis or a daily basis. So they are responsible. So when you look at your burn rate and you see this is my cost is spread across all of your departments. Revenue generally comes from one department, and that's your chief revenue officer. I have seen other chiefs as well, chief financial officer. Every company needs to have somebody responsible for the books. There are outsourced firms that you can go to who will take care of all that financial management for you for a while, but at a certain point you need to have somebody in your business. That could be a chief financial officer. Usually you start with someone who is a director level person who has the experience taking responsibility for all things financial and legal. and that person can sometimes be promoted to a CFO. One of the things about a CFO that I like for that level is someone who actually has experience raising money, dealing with large financial transactions, M&A, corporate development. That's the CFO profile that I look for. There are other CIO, I know in a larger business in particular, often traditionally there was a CIO who was responsible for all the information systems and technology that the company used internally, like your email and IT and so forth. I think that position is largely going away for tech startups, and the CTO and the engineering folks who create product often are the same people who are responsible for IT, and they might have a director of IT report in there. But you know, CIOs still exist, an important group, particularly in large enterprise. So for a startup, less critical. Anyway, that's pretty much the chiefs. Why don't I give you some tips in a minute about how to figure out if somebody is a chief or not. But until that time, why don't I thank our sponsors first. Thanks to Carbonite for sponsoring this episode of Ask Jay. Computer disasters eventually happen to everyone. Your computer crashes, gets infected with a virus, you drop it, theft, fire, etc. But if you get Carbonite Online Backup before your disaster, then no need to worry, because your files will be backed up automatically and safely off-site, and it's really easy to get them back. Plus, you get anytime, anywhere access to your backed up files from any computer, or even on your smartphone or iPad with a free Carbonite app. With Carbonite, unlimited backup for your PC or Mac is just $59 a year. That's less than $5 a month. But when you use the offer code AskJ to start your 15-day free trial, you'll get 2 months free if you decide to buy. All the details are at Carbonite.com. Remember to use the code AskJ to get 2 months free with your purchase. So, how do you know somebody's a chief? Well, the first question is, you go to their LinkedIn profile, have they been a chief before? The answer is no. Well, they're probably not quite qualified yet to be a chief. So that's a catch-22. Sure, you got to start somewhere. I tend to hire directors to be VPs. I tend to hire VPs to be chiefs. But have they been responsible for an entire organization, an entire technology organization, an entire marketing organization, an entire sales organization? And I'm asking that because at this point, you're playing to win. You're a founder, you're a CEO. You want to get somebody who's done this before and has some experience, right? There are certain things where you can have folks come to the table with less experience and this is their first time and it's fun. But by the time you're hiring VPs, I think you're past that point. You want qualifications and some way of proving that to you. So number one, do they have that experience? And number two, how do they present themselves to the outside world? Is this someone who, for example, if you had to go to Wall Street, you would feel comfortable bringing them into a boardroom? If you had to go to raise another round of funding and they were being asked questions by the investors, that you feel comfortable representing your company? If you're not around, you're sick, you're on business travel, can any one of those chiefs, any one of them, represent the company in your absence? Because one of my rules is that's the case, that every single one who's sitting around that table of the executive team needs to possibly represent that company at some point or another in your stead. So, obviously, do they have the experience and can they represent you and the company in the way you want? That's it for today's episode. Send your questions to AskJ. Well, you know what? Don't send your questions to AskJ@revision3.com. You know, it's not that I don't like email, but we get lots of them. Send your video questions. I want video questions. By the way, let me be clear. I'm talking about your face in front of a camera asking the question. I've seen this for the last 10 years in some of the most antiquated online and television shows. I think you can do it for this one. You guys are supposedly entrepreneurs. I want to see you step up to the plate and record your face asking a question and posting it as a video response on Ask Jay Adelson on YouTube. So do that. And then finally, follow me at @JAdelson on Twitter. You can send the questions that way as well. So thanks for joining us, and until next time.